Hi, my name is Jessica Ivey,
I'm Maya James.
and this is the Institute of Public Scholarships Artist Production Fellowship interview. Hi, Maya. Thank you for being here this morning.
Hello. It's nice to see you.
You too.
It's
Always and forever.
Yeah.
Okay, so first thing I want to start with is kind of like that artistic foundation. I mean, I'm sure you get that question all the time from like all kinds of people, but um, the Artist Production Fellowship is all about operating on that we see you basis rather than trying to give someone an opportunity that we feel like needs a break or something. It's a we see what they're already doing. Let's further that work. So tell us about how you got to what you're already doing.
Okay. Well, it's a long story, and
It's
it
all
goes
right.
back to my dad. But it all started with him, and it was actually his birthday on the 10th, so that was like 2 days ago.
Okay.
And
Happy belated dad.
yes,
A great man.
he is my best friend in the whole world. We have been like two peas in a pod since I was born.
Yeah.
More than the boys, and they'll probably tell you that.
Yeah,
as well. But basically, he decided to be an artist out of the Jim Crow era. So I'm a second generation Black artist out of Jim Crow. Oh, sorry, out of Jim Crow. But what that means is that none of my brothers decided to be artists. And I'm following in the footsteps of my father. And so he is pivotal to like everything that I do because his art was his weapon. His art was his liberation from times where he wasn't allowed to speak his voice and he wasn't really allowed to have a voice.
Yeah.
And even in his art, it's abstract and it doesn't really touch on the political emphasis that some of the sneaky little symbolism that he makes is geared towards. And that's because he didn't feel like he could be that on the nose. And so my legacy now is taking that work and taking his masterful skills, taking the roots and the foundation of what this is, and turning it into something that can be used for political progress for Black people.
Yeah.
And so that's what the root of my art is about.
Honoring what he's already put out there and making it a little more upfront. Because having seen your art, like I know it's you.
Yeah.
Like it's really signature and bold, not just like in color or line or shadow, but like the message. It's always like I have it's reverential for me. Like anytime I see your art, I gotta just stand there and like take a minute and then I can start to analyze. And that's probably EFA's fault anyway.
Yeah.
Right? Shout out to EFA
sure.
and the aesthetic training. But like I think seeing your art in the past and then hearing what you just said about your dad and furthering that tradition, that just makes a lot of sense having seen your work. So that's really freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's like the number one feedback I get. It's like, oh, it's your style. We know it's you. And I think also just talking to me and knowing me, and I feel like it's almost to a fault. It's like a blessing and a curse. I can't lie. Like even the expressions on my face to like my body language to like who I am as a person. And it might be like just neurodivergence in and of itself, but like what you see is what you get. And I do give that. So I'm really grateful for this. Like in that sense where it's like we see you and we see what you're doing and your actions that you're taking as opposed to like you have taken this many photos on Instagram of you making art. You know?
Right? You know? Speak on it. It's the truth anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So this feels like a really authentic process in that too.
Yeah. I love that because again, the affirmation is and the acknowledgement because of what it means in our community, right? Like it's individual, but what I love about the Institute is that it coalesces with everything else that's happening when we're talking wellness, when we're talking, family history and genealogy, when we're talking, environmental, like the way that art expresses these things is vitally important. And we hold that as a high value at the Institute, right? Where everything is about art, humanities, and sciences intersecting or coalescing with everything that we're doing programming wise. So I love with the Artist Production Fellowship, seeing these artists and what they're doing goes beyond just, oh yeah, they're talented. Like we know you all are saying something. We know how interconnected it is with personal story, with the high values, just because of the people that we're connected to.
Relationship,
exactly.
Right? Like,
tell us more about Create Dangerously.
Okay, so Create Dangerously is an essay by Albert Camus, and like I said earlier, he was making work that was for future generations to fight against fascism because he knew it was inevitable. And that's basically what we're experiencing now, as we're seeing how radicalized the right is getting and how dark things are, right? What his claim is that there is no way to be an artist. And he means an artist as in someone who's not doing essentially advertisement.
Okay.
Or making frivolous images, right? Yep. So like a dog, a puppy, a cat, like a sunset. These are kind of, he calls it, he says that true art finds its way between two chasms, which is frivolity and propaganda, essentially. And so in order to be a true artist, that means that you are in a position where you cannot create without experiencing some type of danger, because what you do is so valuable in and of itself.
Yep.
In like getting across messages to people, and hopefully messages of positivity and progress. That
or at least challenge that is productive.
Exactly.
Getting you to see something in you or in the world, right?
Yeah. And true art always does that, right? So what he's saying is that that's a very dangerous place to be in, and that there's no way in this world to be an artist without creating dangerously.
Yep.
Right? So in order to create dangerously, because he also said it was like being thrown into the Colosseum, like in a fight between some guy and a lion, like something like that, where it's basically like, you're in there, you can hug the wall, but one way or the other, you're going to have to get across what you need.
Yeah.
And so that's what I try to do with my art. And so that's what this whole project of the Black Artist Path book and program is about.
So that's kind of like, so tell me about it. It's not like an exhibition, it's more of a program that you're going with this fellowship. Oh snap, tell me more. I didn't know that. So I'm like, what are you gonna paint? No, Pedro.
I'm gonna paint. So I have 2 books I'm working on through this fellowship. One's on the Apollo, and we can talk about that. But the other one that I'm really, really excited about is the Black Artist Path. Okay. And that is essentially so Julia Cameron made this book called The Artist's Way.
Yes.
And it's exclusionary, in my opinion. And I wanted to create a path for Black artists where you're not only creating art and like healing yourself through creativity, but you're emancipating your mind. Right. So it's one thing to be an artist and be like, I'm an artist, look at me paint, but it's another to be like freeing your mind from the constraints that you have to think in one way or the other.
Exactly.
And so in that way, I'm creating a 13-week path for Black artists to heal themselves and to create dangerously and to make money while doing it.
So good.
Because that's also healing, is to find a way to make profit out of what you're doing.
Yep.
That's
incredible. I honestly never made it through the Artist's Way for those reasons. It was kind of like,
who has time or the money?
It's from a place, that Toni Morrison interview where she's like, you can't even understand how powerfully racist that question is, or the interviewer was asking like, when are you gonna like write about white people in a substantial way in your characters, right? So that place of being in the center, whiteness says like, oh, just do this. Like you're not, it doesn't even like occur to you that to do what you're asking is out of reach for a whole group of people or more, right? Like, so I appreciate the correction of that, of like, let's look at this from where you are, from who you are, and all that you carry with you when you're making art of any kind. And let's talk about how that intersects with the freedom of your mind, with the monetization for the purpose of freedom and autonomy. Like those things, they can't necessarily be absent from the artistic process anyway. So let's like give you a guide to see that. That's like incredibly powerful.
And like Black artists, we like I'm not even gonna just say just Black artists, right? If you're under the poverty line, going and doing an artist date every week is really inaccessible.
Yes.
If you are somebody who's not able-bodied and can't just like go on a walk, some of these exercises are like go on a walk. And what if you physically can't do that? What if you're incarcerated? You know, do people who are incarcerated not deserve creative healing just as much as people who aren't? And so what this book is a correction.
Yep.
And I did all 12 weeks of Julia Cameron's Artist Way,
Wow.
and I hated it.
Yeah.
Because she does, and the reason, when I got to the point where I was like, I have to write a book about this, it was, I believe, week 4, where she's like, you can't read. You're not allowed to read. And I'm a artist, but I'm also an author. I'm a journalist for Second Wave. I'm a social practice correspondent.
Word.
And I've written for the New York Times. I've written for USA Today College. I like started my career in political science and not in art. I decided to take that and combine it with our art legacy a little bit later on.
Yeah.
And what I noticed about that is I felt so triggered because I'm like, do you know how Black women had to sneak books under their beds so that their literal like
lives
to protect themselves, so that they could have something, so that they could pass something on, because they saw the future that we are in and living right now. You know, so I was incredibly offended. It's also outdated. There's so many other things you can do that would be so much more healing to your creativity than avoiding reading. You know, like how about call people instead of texting them?
Yeah. Try that.
How about delete Instagram for a month?
Yep. And pay attention to what's around you.
You know, like
critically think about what's around you.
Yes.
Listen actively to the interactions that you're having with strangers and people you know alike.
Yeah.
And let that inspire your art. Because again, if it's about making something real and not frivolous, reading something would do the exact opposite, where it ignites something. It points to something critically. It shows you the imagery of a story, right? Like,
and you're forced to imagine it.
Because you're not looking at a screen.
You're forced to imagine it. It's not giving it to you on a platter, and then that creates something that you can create.
That's so good.
You know, also it leaves out all inspiration.
Yep.
Right? It's supposed to be a book about making art, but you're not making art, and you're not absorbing art.
Yep.
And you're not reading. What is this? And it seems like it's the people who perpetuate the book as a really like positive, they tend to be people of privilege, you know, and that's something that I did notice. And these are harsh realities, but what I'm saying is that my book is for everyone. I did all 12 weeks of the Artist's Way. I found the things that weren't working, and I'm creating something that works. Anyone can do it, but it's made for Black artists. So that's
Wow.
And,
I am jumping out of my skin right now. I cannot wait to see it.
We have to hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
Yeah. I think it comes from that awareness and fearlessness that it takes to create. So I even love that title, without being familiar with his work, like Create Dangerously. Again, it speaks to that boldness that you're known for and that we see in your work so obviously, but again, the bravery that it takes to create, right? The messaging and the of it all. When I was talking to James a second ago, he was really speaking to that empty muse of, I'm not constrained to any medium, any palette. Like I surrender to the art form, and we see where it takes me as I keep going. Like, sure, I can make something presentable, but what I hear you saying is about how much it matters to do it at all, and then how it's done, and then what comes of it after the fact.